Phase 4 is finally getting some much needed updates, basically patches with things that were a little bit overpowered, some things that were just not fun to do, and things that are just kind of annoying farms. There's quite a bit of updates that came out today, a little bit slowly and they trickled out, but here we're going to cover everything we learned, as well as there was a new update for Classic Era, which we can just look at briefly really fast. But Classic Era, they did revert a lot of the changes that have happened to Classic Era, as there's been a lot of push, I guess you could say, for Classic Era to remain without changes. Regardless of that, we're gonna first look at the things that changed in Season of Discovery. And if you've been farming your tier sets, if you've been farming your tier 0, and maybe you've been running something like Stratholme 30 times just because you need to get your legs. I've ran Ubers, I think I'm at almost 50 times so far for my chess piece, but basically if you're running something and you're trying to get your tier piece and you couldn't ever get it, they're finally, or I guess not finally, but they're going to be adding them to the Tarnished Undermine Real vendor. You will be able to buy your tier 0 on that vendor, and these are going to be the prices right here. Heads, chest, and legs, 50 of those actual tokens. Shoulders, waist, hands, and feet, 25 tokens, and your wrists will be 15 tokens. This will be really nice because instead of just permanently farming the same dungeon over and over again endlessly with no end in sight, it could take you 100 plus runs. I think back in the day for tier 0 for my rogue chest, it was like almost 160 runs for me to get that to drop. Luckily, that has been now changed, and you can just basically run a world tour with your friends to be able to go through and make sure that you get the items. So now you will end up running all of the different dungeons every day to get all of the tokens you can get. You can get lucky and just get the drop, or you might just end up using literally the tokens and buying the drop, which is honestly, in my opinion, great. You don't need to be like only one shaman allowed in this group or only one hunter or feral druid, whatever it is. And on top of that, every class is looking very powerful right now. Your class may be overperforming or underperforming because what we're doing right now in the game, all that matters is pure AoE damage. So you can see just feral druids and hunters and shadow priests are incredibly strong right now, whereas rogues are incredibly weak because their AoE damage is extremely weak. Those are things you shouldn't have to worry about. Everybody is worried that their class is kind of underperforming right now, but the only thing that we're doing is just pulling big and nuking things down. It's pretty much Mythic Plus right now. So if your class doesn't have crazy cleave, just be ready when we move into the raid. And tomorrow you'll notice this, a lot of classes you thought were underperforming will perform really well, i.e. rogues and hopefully soon warriors. But there was something that was really oppressive. The Blackrock Mountain event was atrocious, to be honest. This event was really bad. BRM, pretty much you went in there and you were always just stuck battle resing and taking res sickness and instantly dying and trying to run to the dungeon. Not to mention, if you're on Alliance, you have shamans with one flame shock that can hit your entire party and take you down instantly if you just can't actually cleanse that. Shamans deleting entire raids, and on top of that, hunters with double trap and double entrapment, which was god awful. This was the most painful thing ever because they could throw both of their traps out at you and both of them would have multiple times or chances to proc entrapment with no ICD for 5-second stuns. This was impossible. You literally can't move, and while you're stuck not being able to move, a shaman would just nuke you down instantly, or a hunter with its range could defeat you from Narnia. That is no longer going to be the same amount of an issue because, for one, hunter traps have been nerfed. The frost trap is no longer a trap you can throw. It no longer works with your lock and load. With your trap launcher. You cannot throw frost traps anymore. You still can place them in positions that are gonna freeze people, essentially like AV. If you're trying to get across the bridge, that still is a place you can just drop them, but still it's not nearly as oppressive. I think it would have been a lot better to deal with entrapment, just like almost get rid of it or add an ICD where it can only proc off of the initial trap itself. but the big issue was you would just get stunned, and then a balanced druid or the hunter, or of course one shaman, would just take out your entire raid group. So they have actually addressed this. This is really nice. And they've also addressed the issue of res sickness, being stuck trying to run to the dungeons. They actually, the little cook emoji, they've actually addressed this itself. So here with Blackrock Eruption, you can see that the Drained of Blood aura is now going to be applied on you. Pretty much whenever you die or resurrect, you'll have this aura that allows you to run invisible for 20 seconds with increased movement speed and not be taken out by anything. It's the same thing as Stranglethorn Veil. They have just basically applied that. And this will also be a thing as you leave dungeons. So as you're zoning out of dungeons, you won't have to worry about just getting farmed indefinitely. People are always standing there just trying to farm you outside of dungeons, so you don't have to worry about that. Now, druids had an item they could farm called Flame Wrath that turned them into insane fire kitties. Look at the damage that's going out there. All of this fire damage scaling at a 1-to-1 rate. But Flame Wrath is a polearm that drops in Blackrock Depths, and it has a proc. Basically, when you're being hit, you will put a shield on yourself that will just do damage to all of the targets around you. Now, Ret Paladin tanks can use this for dungeons, and it's insane, like absolutely amazing. They'll probably end up doing more damage, especially with their tier gear, from just normal AoE stuff, but this thing can be amazing, and it was working in form for druids, which is obviously busted. You're seeing that the damage go out here, but even then, it's not like this is crazy damage. 900, 1000 DPS. That's not great. It does have a 1-to-1 spell power coefficient, and that is the scary thing. It could be min-maxed in a crazy way. And Ebb and Flow actually found this from Ted J, so shout out to that. But that has now been nerfed and fixed. As we mentioned, the Hunter Trap Launcher has been fixed. Mages, Conjure Water rank 7 will now give you 20 water instantly instead of just whatever the minimum amount is. So your upgraded water will give you 20 water. Mana Shield will no longer stack with Advanced Warning if this is engraved on your yourself, so you're not getting double the shields. And you also can't just equip the rune after casting Mana Shield to get the double rune. This is something they already have paid attention to. And for shamans, burn will now persist through death, so you don't have to recast Flame Tongue weapon every time you respawn. Shamans are just insane. Not necessarily not necessarily enhancement shamans, but LE shamans and shaman tanks are just like ungodly. But a huge one that I know a lot of people are going to be excited about is warlocks. Fell Rifts. Your Decimation rune has been awful to farm, and I know a lot of you guys are complaining about this. Now, the rifts themselves have an increased spawn rate. The chance of finding a Legion portal tuner is also increased, and you will always get your rune of Decimation guaranteed from an overcharged portal. Warlocks are back, baby. Warlocks, you're back, and you're gonna have a good time. There's a few other things we need to cover, like people farming their coins in STV. You can just pretty much get into a group in STV, pay people to basically give you 1,000,000 coins, like an infinite amount of coins, which will then basically give you an infinite amount of honor. Like, this is a ridiculous honor farm, and Josito posted about this. This obviously needs to get fixed and patched, but people are selling, with multi-boxing, are selling boosts for coins, and you can see a ton of people are literally buying it. It is kind of insane. So that hopefully gets fixed by Blizzard. And then if we talk about Classic Era, which has a ton of drama going on right now, which we can talk about in a later video, but Classic Era did have some of the changes that came to Season of Discovery. Basically, you didn't have to wait the 6-hour cooldown for Rallying Cry of the Dragon Slayer, and Alliance got a Ren buff. This was just purely, in my opinion, these things are like quality of life, but Classic Era players got really mad about it, and they hate being able to get Rallying Cry of the Dragon Slayer instead of waiting 6 hours. They don't like being able to get it every minute. That's a bad thing, and I get that. I understand the no changes thing. You realize you always want it on a timer, so you know when to log instead of randomly happening. Druids were being able to train polearms, and like, that can't happen. That's just atrocious. So that got reverted, and Alliance getting their own version of Warchief's Blessing has also been reverted. I'd rather all Alliance just have to go to Crossroads and get mind controlled if they want Warchief's Blessing. Alliance are just stronger in Classic WoW. That's just a fact at the later phases. Early on, Wind Fury is better, but by AQ, Alliance are literally stronger with Paladins and Kings. One of the advantages that Horde had was essentially War Chief's Blessing. It's not the same thing. In Season of Discovery, obviously Shamans are like infinitely stronger than anything the Alliance has, but regardless, this makes sense. Alliance had to go out of their way to get this absolutely insane world buff, probably the strongest world buff for melee classes, just so that they could run speedruns and stuff. But if you're a speedrun enjoyer, look at that. That was literally Wind Force right there, going down in War Chief's Blessing Horde only. Funny enough, when I was dying, where is it? When I was dying, over here, Wind Force right here just says, can't you just stealth? Look at this, guys. Didn't he just say, can't you just stealth as I was being farmed in the mountain? He learned his lesson. Those are the changes. Those changes have been reverted, as well as Season of Discovery. We now, tomorrow, will have access to the first world bosses. These will be Kazakh and Azure Ghost. These will be instanced world bosses tuned to 20 man. So you can probably take them down as a lot lower than 20 man. Good luck on loot, guys, and I'll keep you updated on any other changes.